Hi, I'm John Matthews, veteran law enforcement officer, winery owner, and your host for the podcast version of True Crime and Wine. And I can't believe it. It's already season four. But I'm so pleased that you've joined us for this very unique podcast where we feature the fascinating world of serial killers while enjoying award-winning wine. So why serial killers and wine? Well, the answer is simple. I'm the only winemaker in the world that's actually captured a serial killer. No, I didn't use wine, but this is real true crime and real wine. And in each episode, myself and Brandy Diamond, the popular podcast host of Texas Wine and True Crime, together we take you on a journey profiling some of the most interesting and intriguing serial killer cases from all around the world while enjoying our favorite wines. Now, I've got my favorite Casaro wine today. It's a Tempranillo, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So pour yourself a glass of Killer Cabernet or maybe Murderous Merlot and join us for the podcast version of True Crime and Wine. Now, in this episode, we're going to take you on a journey profiling the life and crimes of Nanny Doss. That's a serial killer who, in her quest for true love, decided that murder was often a better option. Now, I want to welcome in my co-host, Brandy Diamond. And Brandy, this is a unique case because this killer, this serial killer, claimed all she ever wanted was to be in love. But when her husbands or other family members got in between her and money, she chose murder.
Oh, so maybe it wasn't so much love as it was money. And she was the Giggling Granny. And how often do we see granny serial killers, John?
I think she killed throughout her life, but when she caught, she was certainly a granny. And I'll tell you, they called her the Giggling Granny. So let me put this into context here. She giggled during her confession. Talk about a serial killer who had no empathy and no remorse. So you'd think giggling grandma, well, that's pretty funny, but she had no remorse for all of those people that she murdered. Brandy, can you believe it? We're already in season 4. I mean, it seems like we just started.
I know. I was just thinking that. I was like, how long ago did we have this conversation about launching this podcast? I cannot believe we're in season 4, John.
Yeah, and it's going to be a great season, a whole new lineup of serial killers from around the world. I can't believe how our audience is growing. Thank you, audience. Thank you, all your listeners out there. The platforms that Lauren has got us on, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, YouTube, iHeartRadio. It just keeps growing, and the numbers are growing, just exponentially. So we're looking forward to that. Season 4 is going to have a lot of highlights for us. We're going to introduce some new True Crime and Wine wines. We're going to introduce some new partners. And if I sound kind of reinvigorated, it's because I am. During our little break between season 3 and season 4, we jetted off with our wine club members at Casaro Winery, including our producer, Lauren. She went with us and just had a great time. We toured Tuscany. We ended up being there for 8 days. Toured Tuscany, private wine tastings, wine pairings, wine dinners, Michelin restaurants, private tours. Awesome. Just fantastic.
I can't wait to go next time, John. I will be there. Count me in. Not missing that one. I did not go to Italy. I went to Midland, Texas for about 5 days and had to work with clients. But
wow,
the break was nice. Okay, tell me your favorite part about Italy. I know we're all going to share more with the listeners of maybe upcoming things happening with True Crime and Wine. But what was your favorite part?
Yeah, I know. We keep getting requests out there. So maybe we'll have a big announcement coming up shortly when we work out the details. But yeah, the wine. The
Your
wine
wine.
was just spectacular. I love my wine. I love my winery, but going back to kind of my Italian roots and seeing a lot of friends that I have in Tuscany, and they're all winemakers. And so
Yeah.
for me, it's kind of refreshing visiting with them and looking at their wines and their issues and what do they do and how do they do it. We had just an amazing assortment of wines, literally from the time that we landed, and that was just really interesting seeing how different they were. We had Montepulciano from Montepulciano. We
Mm.
had Brunello del Montalcino from Montalcino. We had Chianti from the Chianti region of Tuscany. And then we just every single night had a wine dinner. Nearly every single afternoon had a wine lunch and a tasting. So if you're into wine, and it was just a great experience, and hopefully we can work out some kinks with wine and true crime and Italy, and have something to announce pretty soon. But we took about 25 folks over there. Everybody absolutely loved it. Really upscale tour. It wasn't a get 50 people on a tour bus and drive around.
Yeah.
We did a lot of behind the scene things at wineries, going down into the cellars, and each layer of the cellar was 200 or 300 years old. And then, when you get to the bottom, you're in like the 13th century when they started
Amazing.
making the wine and storing it. I sat in Monteregione, a 13th century village, and everybody had gone. Everybody was back getting ready for a dinner that evening, and I got to sit in the piazza and just drink a great glass of Chianti, and they brought me some snacks, and literally everywhere we went. And that's the thing about Italy. You go in, you order a drink, and you're not looking at your appetizer menu and looking at this. They're simply bringing you food. They want
Yeah.
you to be happy. They want you to enjoy. And it didn't matter if I was in Rome, or if I was in Siena or Monteregione, anywhere that I went, we had great wine. We had great appetizers. And it was just Italy for me as a food and wine experience. And then, Brandy, we had a pasta making class. It was so fun.
Oh my gosh, homemade pasta is my favorite. Fresh, yummy.
And so we did 3 different pastas. We did gnocchi, we did a spinach and ricotta ravioli, and we did fettuccine, all from scratch. We finished it with panna cotta, dessert, just absolutely wonderful. And of course, I might have been drinking just a little bit. I don't know if somebody told them or not, but one of my kryptonites might be Prosecco, and they
Okay.
broke out the Prosecco, and I think Lauren will agree. It kind of went downhill from there, right? Yeah, we really we had a good time in Florence at the Chef's Academy, one of the best
Oh, that's
places.
amazing.
Yeah, absolutely great. So anyway, great
That's so cool.
time, great food, great wine in Italy. I'm so excited about season 4
Me
and
too.
getting started today.
Yes, and I want to thank all of our listeners too. And please remember to share this. Please remember to leave us a review. It all helps. And John, I'm really excited about season 4, being on this journey with you. Can't wait to visit Italy with you. And by the way, I am also a Prosecco queen, so you and I will have a little bit of fun with Prosecco when we're
There
in Italy.
we go. All right. Yeah. No, I tell you, we already at Casaro are starting a list for next year for our wine club, a list for Tuscany, a list for Sicily. We probably are going to do 2 trips, and
Great.
we'll see. We'll tease our listeners here just a little bit, but maybe even sooner we'll have another trip coming up. We have a lot of people that want to go,
Fantastic.
and if you want a great kind of upscale experience, that's what we did.
Awesome. All right. Well, my mouth is watering from all that conversation. So let me start talking. We are going to be covering Nanny Doss today, aka the Giggling Granny. She was born November 4th, 1905 as Nancy Agnes Hazel in Blue Mountain, Alabama. She died in June of 1965 in McAlester, Oklahoma. Now, she is the American serial killer, John, that you mentioned when we opened this show, who confessed to 11 murders between 1927 and 1954. And they were primarily family members poisoned for insurance money, John. So now we have a little bit of her MO.
Yeah, and again, this goes back to what we see in the vast majority, over 88% of female serial killers. Their primary motive is money. And here it was. She kept saying, it was love, it was love. I was just looking for love. But it was money. She learned how to scam the insurance industry. She learned how to scam these husbands. And a little bit different, we covered Annie Hahn, Arsenic Annie, a little while ago. Arsenic Annie was a little bit different because she had a shared culture with her victims. She had a very small area where she worked. She stayed in that area, even though she had relationships with multiple men and killed them. It was a very small hunting ground. Nanny Doss, however, literally went state to state. She said searching for love. We know it was searching for money. So she was an active hunter.
Yes.
More along what we'd see with a male serial killer.
Well, and not familiar with all of these areas. I mean, going state to state, feeling comfortable enough to be in. And so now I'm seeing already that her comfort zone may not be directly where she's located. She decided to move this around the states. We've seen that in multiple male serial killers, but really a woman hunter, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. And once she figured out she could scam the insurance system and get money, this is the level of lack of remorse, lack of empathy that she had. She didn't care who she killed. She wanted the money.
And to laugh during the confessions, which is how she got the nickname Giggling Granny, but she targeted husbands, children, relatives, like you said, for love, but really it was for money. And her case really highlighted, I think, John, the Black Widow killers during that mid 20th century. The time frame, again, 1920s, there's, different economic time, different survival motives for women. I would say just being a woman. So, what are you picking up with the behavior and the actual time this is going on?
Well, certainly she falls into that group of Black Widow female serial killers using poison. Poison, again, is the number one weapon of women. The number one motive is financial gain. So we see her checking those boxes immediately. But we can see her as a predatory hunter, too, in that she's willing to pick up and move and go to a different state and find a different target, right? Seduce a different target, kill a different target, and then move on. And she does this over and over again. So, we can kind of see that. We also know during this time period, autopsies weren't what they are. The chemistry wasn't what it is as far as testing for toxins and poisons and chemicals. And so you can get away with quite a bit in putting it in people's drinks, poisoning them over a long period of time if you have to, and it's not going to be revealed. Just like in Arsenic Annie, she wasn't caught till the very, very end when they brought her in and said, "Do you know this guy?" And she said, "Oh, I don't know him." But then the son says, "Oh yeah, we were traveling together." The radar goes up with the police, the doctor, they run some tests and figure out this guy just got poisoned with arsenic and backtracked it. So during this time period, it's not today. We got to remember that we did not have a lot of those investigative technologies in the 30s, 40s, and 50s that we have today.
So every time we start a show, we talk about the early life, what has shaped this person possibly to do the things that they do. But she had two parents. She had a brother, four sisters, but the father was abusive and controlling. She was prohibited to wear makeup, no attractive clothing, for fear of being molested. Okay, so as a parent, I can understand some of those thoughts that as parents, we want to protect our kids. But she was also forbidden to go to dances and social events, which, as you and I both know, is very important for kids as they grow, become social, be able to interact with other people. And she was also forced to work on a family farm over education. So being kind of taken out of the society, right, at her age, put to work. I mean, these are some early red flags for me, John.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, she's going to lack the social skills.
Mm-hmm.
And as a parent and a parent of daughters, there's a fine line, right? I can
That's right.
understand a certain point. Hey, you don't need to wear that out. You don't need to wear that in public, or, if
Right.
you want to wear that around the house, that's fine. But when you start getting over the line and saying no makeup, no social life, no dances. Matter of fact, I don't even think you ought to go to school. You need to work on the farm. That starts being obviously detrimental. And as we can see, that shaped her whole view of society, of social interaction, of men, sexual relationships,
Yep.
because what happened to her as a young girl.
And we look at those early red flags, and then we look at the trauma. Was there abuse? Uh, Poor academic performance due to the truancy when she was in school. John raped multiple times as a child by local men, and her father didn't believe her. That's again a very sad and unfortunate piece of this as well. She was absolutely infatuated with romance magazines, but forbidden from being actually social. So she probably has these thoughts, feelings about boys and men, but then again, she's sexually assaulted. The father doesn't believe her. And John, at age
And,
7, she has a head injury from a train accident.
yep. Yep.
I mean,
Yeah, no,
there's so many red flags here.
yeah, and I go back and where it said, the dad didn't want her to be molested.
Yeah, I
Wait a
know.
minute, right there, that's a big red flag for me. As a dad, I don't want my girls to be molested, but am I going to verbalize that? Am I going to be fixated on that? Or does he know she's being molested? Does he know she's being raped by these other guys and he's turning a blind eye, or is he involved? So, I mean, right there, when I start putting those pieces of the puzzle together, I start seeing a different view of her dad and what's going on. We've seen this many times with women. For whatever reason, especially when abuse is involved, they turn their head and they let their child get abused, or they let their child get raped. It's almost like, well, at least it's not me. So to me, the dad knows more, and maybe that's why he went so overboard. He knew what was going on. The other thing you mentioned, and I thought it was great because we've talked about this a couple of times, we do have some emerging research now that says traumatic brain injury could be a common factor among serial killers. And you and I have pointed it out in several cases, over the years, falling off a swing and getting a head injury. Several different times we've run into this, and here it is again. So I thought it was actually fascinating that you could point back to when she was 7.
I know.
And that this accident caused headaches, blackouts, and depression. And she ended up blaming her actions on this. I don't think anybody believed her, but I think research today might now show, yes, there was some causality between the TBI and her actions. Now, The TBI doesn't explain. It doesn't say you got a brain injury, so you can go murder, right? We're
Right.
not saying that. But when we look at some of the commonalities among killers out there, one thing that is emerging is research about traumatic brain injury. And when you see a specific case like this, where parents, relatives, witnesses, other people go, you know what? Her demeanor changed. She started having these headaches. She was really depressed. She would black
Yeah.
out. We got to take that into account is all I'm saying. We got to take that into
Oh,
account.
100%. And I think nobody knows your body better than you do. And so if that's the way she was feeling at the time and expressed that, I think she probably knew deep down it probably had something to do with it. And John, we're in 2026. How many cases have we seen lately of, of murder suicide, right? And then they find out that there was a traumatic brain injury.
Yep.
Sometimes it's happening in kids who are in their 20s and they're murdering their parents, and to come to find out, there's been some significant brain injury, as a child. So I'm glad they're doing more research on this. And like you said, it's not an excuse to go out and murder, but the brain is a very interesting and sensitive part of our body and really can manipulate everything else. So I would not be surprised if this had something to do with it.
Yeah, and she was 7. How many of these cases have we looked at, Brandy, where they've been under 10? And it was a playground accident, or it was some type of accident where they were young, under 10, growing, forming. So I think that, bodes well for more research into this area so we can, figure it out just a little bit more.
So we identified some of the red flags already: abusive home, the sexual trauma, forced work, being taken out of school and out of the social space for her, and really some fantasies that shaped her unstable personality. And so the parents, right? John, I agree with you. I think with the father, the no makeup, wanting her to dress a little bit more conservative to go out. Again, to me, that's control on a higher level.
Right.
So just a lot of red flags there. But what else are you picking up from a profiling perspective?
I think one of the things that was really interesting to me is how she, later on after her arrest, commented about the fascination with love letters and magazines and being somewhere different. But that is very, very common for women that are abused and women that are sexually assaulted, especially. They project themselves into another place. They project themselves into a fantasy world. And so maybe, again, in law enforcement, we look at the totality of factors, and I can certainly see how the relationships at home, the abuse, the sexual assault, the strict disciplinarian, forced to leave school and work on the farm, play into this. There's got to be a better life. There's got to be a Prince Charming out there. There's got to be a fantasy that I can go to or build for myself. So I think that's an important aspect for this. Was she always chasing something she would never find? And then when she realized she wouldn't get it with somebody, she murdered him?
Or didn't know how to have the relationship, wanting love, but not knowing how to receive it or give it based on, those red flags we mentioned and growing up. I mean, who really knows? Plus the traumatic brain injury. But John, she actually gets married at the age of 16. You mentioned her dreaming of romance and, loving love. So she was working in a linen factory. First marriage at 16. Father actually approved this to happen. And she marries a guy named Charlie Braggs. And like a lot of women did back then, John, even women in the 50s and 60s, they want to escape their home life. So most of the time they got married at a young age, but was forced to move in with his unwed mother and live in her lifestyle. What do we know about that?
Well, so this is a really bad situation. She's 16. The dad's like, okay, I'm done with you. I'm getting rid of you. She's like, I want to be out of here. But she moved from a bad situation to another bad situation because now she's married and has the duties, responsibilities, obligations of a wife, but she's living under the house of her husband's mother, and the
Hmm.
mother's dictating 100% how she's going to live. So she went from her dad overprotective and how he was ruling his house now to her husband's mother, and she's got to live her lifestyle, her rules, and her obligations. So things went from bad to worse.
Well, and not only that, you have, I mean, God bless her, 1924 to 1927, she has 4 daughters. But then her and her husband were actually having multiple affairs at this time. So unstable relationship, living in a place she doesn't probably want to be. So she starts drinking and smoking and starting to have an outlet from her everyday life.
Yeah, we can see that spiral out of control, and
Yeah.
certainly, we can see the reasons for it. Right? She's
Yeah.
living with a husband. She's got those responsibilities, but with her mother-in-law, 4 kids, literally back to back to back to
Back to
back,
back.
4 daughters. And in if this isn't overwhelming enough, her husband is having affairs. They're young.
Mhm.
She is starting to have affairs. They have a terrible, unstable relationship, and she turns to self medication, which is heavy, heavy drinking. So we can see her life at a very young age spiraling out of control. I mean, brain injury at 7,
Yeah.
sexually assaulted as a young teenager, married at 16, and then 4 kids and a horrible home life. You
Yeah.
certainly can see things have gone from bad to worse.
Well, and also, it wasn't her only husband. She ended up having 5 different husbands from 1921 to 1953. Now, she kind of made herself out to be this very doting and loving wife, but then she would basically sneak off and go have affairs with other people.
Right. Yeah. And so this never stopped. From it started at a very young age and it never stopped. It was almost like this insatiable need,
Yep.
this desire to find the one. And even when she found one and got married, that wasn't good enough for her. There was always going to be some other knight in shining armor out there. But as we know, that was in her head, right?
Yeah.
That was her fantasy. That was something she made up to get through her young young adult life, right? In her
Yeah.
early years. And you got to believe with her first husband and the mother-in-law and then after the kids and everything, she kept looking for this better life, this love of her life that would take
Mhm.
her away, that would sweep her off her feet, and reality just kept getting in the way.
Well, and I wasn't expecting her first murder to be her 2 middle daughters, but they claimed food poisoning in 1927. Um, I mean, were you surprised by this, John?
I I think it was her early ramp. I think it
Okay.
was her stepping stone into murder. Uh, I think she was totally overwhelmed, and
Yep.
we've seen this with some women that have multiple pregnancies and births in a very, very short period of time. They are absolutely overwhelmed. They don't know what to do. They want to get out of the situation, and she figured out, well, maybe if 2 of the 4 are gone, I'll be a little better off. And
Mm.
so they suspected food poisoning in those 2 kids.
So what else do we know about the asphyxia and the poisoning of a grandson? What do we
Well,
know about this?
yeah, so later on, she's going to continue this kind of trend. And when poisoning doesn't work, she strangles them
Mm.
or smothers them. And so this is kind of the beginning, right? This is the
Mhm.
beginning of her going, I hate my life and I want something else. And if people get in my way, I'm going to take care of it because I want something better.
So, John, she picks up a second husband in 1929, Robert Franklin Harrelson. They lived in Jacksonville with Melvina and Florine. But after a few months, she discovered that he was an alcoholic and had a criminal record for assault. But besides that, they married. That marriage lasted 16 years. So, what do
Longer
we know
than
about this time?
longer than any one of her relationships. But
Yes.
again, I think this was uh, a very open relationship, you might say. So even though they stayed married for 16 years, he was an alcoholic. She was drinking very, very heavily at this time. She had already murdered two of her daughters and was looking for that better lifestyle. And I think during this entire 16-year period, she was out there searching. And this is one of those times that when I start looking at the chronology of the case, the murders, when they occurred, who they were, and I see a gap like this, I always tell you there's a gap for a reason. We probably just haven't found all the bodies yet. So I don't know that she stopped killing once she started in 27, but I do know that she was with this husband for 16 years.
Well, and we're talking about the gap, right? 27, but we know in 1945, she killed some of her grandsons. Robert Lee Haynes, she killed her other second grandson, and then one grandson was a newborn,
Yep.
suspected hat pin stabbing, and then the other son in July of 19 or excuse me, grandson in July of 1945 died from asphyxia, and she got a $500 insurance payout on his death.
And that's where it really starts to spiral out of control. When she killed her two daughters, there wasn't any insurance money involved. That was more of a escape. I can't take this. I cannot take this, right? I
Right.
cannot live like this. Now that she's had a taste for murder and her victims have an insurance policy, she kills them and collects the insurance. This is where the financial gain starts. It did not start in 27 with the first two murders.
That's right.
It started when she's got insurance money for her grandson. And then all of a sudden, you see those wheels start turning. Right, Brandy? You
That's
see the
right.
wheels start turning. Wow, if I do this and I do it the right way, maybe I can get more money. Maybe I can. But she doesn't just stick to poisoning. She smothers them, right, to
Yeah.
death. They think with the second grandson, the newborn, she may have even used a hat pin, one of those big long hat pins,
Yeah.
to stab the baby, as well as smother him. But we can see she has no regard for life whatsoever. I mean, and for me being a parent, she crossed the line in 27. Killing
Mhm.
somebody is one thing. Killing a kid,
I
killing
know.
your kid, killing a baby, your grandson. I mean, she is cold blooded as they get. And that's why it's just such a irony that she was nicknamed the giggling grandmother when she is actually this horrific,
Mhm.
cold blooded killer.
Well, think about how easy it was to off her two middle daughters, and now she realizes she can get money for doing something that she's frankly comfortable with doing.
Right.
And it's just a very like you said, I don't know if it gets much colder than that, honestly, but the MO is money for her, the financial gain, and the desire to just start new relationships. And you mentioned the method of murder was, typically rat poison is what we found out in food and drinks. But asphyxia, stabbing, I mean, she's now running the gamut. She doesn't have a consistent way of murdering. Are you thinking she's a little organized at this point or a little disorganized?
No, I think she's getting very organized. I think she's understanding. I think she's learning about the different types of poisons. And this is what, Arsenic Annie did too. She would give her victim not just arsenic, but different poisons that mimicked issues that her husbands had, right? So when they died, the original autopsies were, well, he had a heart problem, so he died of the heart problem. Oh, he had stomach problems or stomach cancer, so he died of that. So again, we're talking 1920s, 1930s here, and the technology just isn't there, but it's fairly obvious that these women figured out pretty quickly that depending on what poison they used, it could mimic natural causes. So now there's no suspicion about murder, and she's collecting the insurance payments from each and every victim. Now, as you know, on each episode of True Crime and Wine, we feature one of our Casara Winery brands. And today I'm enjoying our Tempranillo, a dry red with notes like cherries and figs. And it's a little peppery and smoky aroma. But this is a great dry red wine that pairs well with barbecue, with carne asada. Last night, I had this with fajitas. We made a little spread, cooked out in the Blackstone. We had fajitas. We had our tortillas, our peppers, our onions, our jalapenos. Even had some rice on there. Anyway, great Mexican meal. And this Tempranillo was absolutely fantastic with it. And of course, this Tempranillo is great while listening to True Crime and Wine, the podcast. As always, you can get all of our Casara wines at casarawines.com. We ship to 43 different states, so shoot us an email, send us an order. We'll get the wine out to you so you can listen to True Crime and Wine and have your favorite wine. Salute.
Okay, so we know her murder spree started when she killed her two middle daughters. Then we know that she kills the grandchildren of her first husband. And
Second.
now, oh, excuse me, second husband. Yes, thank you. But her first husband, she's not done with him, John. She ends up murdering him.
Later on.
I mean, okay, what do we know about that?
Well, let's start off with it. We can try to get this in order. Her second husband, right? So she had the first husband, and remember they had the 4 kids in 4 years and the rocky relationship and all that. She's gone now. She's on to husband number 2, but this is her first husband murder. So up to this point, up to this point, she's murdered her 2 children, right, that she had with husband 1, and she's murdered her grandson and an infant with husband number 2. But that's not enough. And remember, with the second husband, she got the insurance payout from the grandson, which was like $500.
So, okay, but now she's got a story for this one. So this was, again, Robert Franklin Harrelson, 1945, husband number 2, white male in his 40s. And she says that he was drunk and they had a fight. Then he raped her in the rose garden. She found his whiskey jar and poisoned it with arsenic, and then he died later that night. So she's got a story.
Yeah, she does. And she's like, hey, he raped me. We always had a bad relationship, but I ended it. I poisoned him. I killed him. I put the arsenic in his whiskey jar. So now we know once and for all, what she's using, what poison she's using, what she's trying to do. So she says they were out, they had a fight, they're in the rose garden, he raped her, he passed out, he was drunk. She put arsenic into his whiskey jar. When he woke up, he drank it, and he died later that night. So from a victimology standpoint, profiling, we're all over the place.
Yeah.
We because we've got two little girls, which were her daughters. We have a grandson who was a small child. We have a newborn grandson. And now we have husband two, murdered husband one. So we can see that she is preying on her inner circle, her own family members. They mean absolutely nothing to her. But this is going to trigger her now, because once you've killed everybody, to go out hunting again and to go out in search of new victims, which in her case is new husbands. So from a profiling standpoint, victimology, we certainly have that down. She attacks from within and kills her family and those closest to her. From a behavioral characteristic standpoint, MO, we know she's found her comfort zone. With the kids, it was easy. You could suffocate them or you could poison them. But now with the men, with the husband, she's turning to poison to get them out of her life. So this is becoming a very organized killer that has a plan. Who knows about the Rose Garden story? Right? That could be something she concocted later, a cover story or whatever. She had been with the guy for 16 years. He's all of a sudden going to grab her and rape her in a rose garden.
And that's why, John, did anybody pick up on these strange coincidences of death?
No, they didn't, because again, we have these murders in different jurisdictions. And so again, when you're talking 1927, 1929, 1945, you've got a long time period there. They're not connected by people. They're not connected by states. I think originally her killing spree began in Alabama. Her last victims up to this point were in Florida. And so she's moving around, and I think she goes to North Carolina next. So no, none of these crimes are being connected at all at this point. Nothing.
Wow. Like you said, she goes to North Carolina. So third husband, she's on to the third, and this will be the second husband that she murders. She meets her third husband through the Lonely Hearts Club column.
And that's something, by the way, I didn't mention it earlier, but that was a very popular column in newspapers during these decades, right? Lonely Hearts, looking for love, looking for romance. I'm so-and-so and I want to be with somebody else. So, today we've got all kinds of apps and dating apps and Tinder and all the, back then they had Lonely Hearts columns. She figured out a long time ago she could use that to her advantage to do what? Find victims. Yeah.
Find some more husbands.
Yep.
But he marries her 3 days later.
Wow, who was more desperate? Who was more desperate? I don't know.
You would think one of them would have some good sense to know 3 days later may not be the best option, but he went through with it. They married 3 days after meeting, but then she would disappear for months.
Yep.
So, I mean, she would be gone again, probably other relationships, maybe meeting other people in the Lonely Hearts Club column. But his name was Arlie Jackson Lanning, white male, in his 50s. Now, alleged heart failure, but now we know poison. Again, this was happening in North Carolina. So
yeah, they didn't find out. Just like the other murders we talked about, unless they do an autopsy trying to specifically identify a cause of death. White male, 50, heart attack. I don't need to know anything else, right?
Right.
The guy died. If I'm not suspecting anything at all, and I just have another dead white male of a heart attack, right? In 1950, there's nothing unusual about that. So they didn't look into it any further. we know now she poisoned him. But back then, they didn't know that. So, again, and this pattern, this longing for the white knight, this longing for love, this longing maybe just for another victim. So
Yeah.
with each of these marriages, she's going out and having relationships with other men throughout the entire marriage.
Well, and not only that, she is targeting the relatives of these husbands. I mean, we know she inherited. So Lanning, the husband she just
Yep.
murdered, house burns down. She inherits the money instead of the sister-in-law because she murdered the sister-in-law.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So she has learned, right? When
Yeah.
she got that first payment for the insurance from the grandson, now she's taken this to another level. Third husband, second husband murdered, and she's doing it for money. She kills him, the house burns down, and she gets the money because she killed the sister-in-law who was going to inherit the house and the money. So
Just
again,
wild.
financial gain, no feeling for anybody, no remorse, no empathy. She's murdering at a whim. And you just try to look at, I just, it's hard for me to believe. She marries this guy and then immediately starts disappearing and going, having affairs and everything else. What is he doing? Is he doing the same thing? Is he sitting at home? Is he, I don't know, but it gets to a point with each of them where she goes, okay, utilitarianism is over with this one. I'm going to get rid of him and I'm going to get whatever I can out of it.
I mean, yeah, to start targeting the family members again, like to make sure. I mean, it's just wild, standing in the way of being inherited. And it reminds me, John, of just like people that are targeted and you don't know you're being targeted. I know that sounds strange.
Right.
We see a lot of, like, again, predator behavior, stalking, not knowing someone's watching you or knows even about you. And that's probably, that should be a huge fear for everyone. But it is very interesting when you see these cases of maybe that sister-in-law had absolutely no idea, right? That she was even going to be a victim because of just her being able to inherit a house that another woman wanted. I mean, just wild.
Most of us don't look over our shoulder,
No, we
right?
don't.
I don't think we're paranoid and we don't look over our shoulder. So we're not expecting when something comes out of left field.
I know.
Oh my God. Can you imagine what she was thinking? Are you married to this woman after 3 days? You just met her? What kind of woman is she? What kind of background does she have? Well, it's whatever she told him, right?
Yeah,
Because she's now in
exactly.
North Carolina. So we've seen Alabama, Florida, and now North Carolina. So she disposes of these. Again, I keep the thing that's fascinating to me about this is I can't believe she's a female serial killer. Yes, I know she's killing husbands. She's using poisoning. It's for financial gain, but she's hunting. She's a predator. She is traveling state to state. She is on the prowl. I got to think that over those months she disappeared with husband number 3, she was out hunting constantly, looking either
100%.
for love or for the next victim.
After he dies, she meets and marries a man named Richard Morton. So again, looking for that next husband, she joined a dating service called the Diamond Circle Club, and that's where she actually met Richard in Jamestown, North Carolina. They married in 1952 in Emporia, Kansas. Now, he did not have a drinking problem, but he was a little adulterous like she was. He liked to be out on the prowl a little bit.
Yeah, and we've seen this with at least a majority of the men she's with.
Yes.
So is this a characteristic that she's embracing? And why is she embracing that? Is it that she wants to be doing it? And if they're doing it, it's okay for her? I don't know. But, again, we're trying to put normal, rational expectations on somebody that's not normal, not rational, not behaving like a normal person. A normal person does not kill their children. A normal
Right.
person does not kill their grandchildren. A normal person does not hunt down husband after husband after husband. And so a lot of this, we were kind of like, well, it really isn't fitting together. But in her mind, and like we always say, Brandy, that's all that matters. In
That's right.
her mind, this makes sense to her.
Well, and you also think like you're a new wife. So how much control, like think about this, right? Think about the time that this is going on. 1930s, 40s, 50s, women stayed at home. They
Yeah.
were cooking for their husbands and their children. I mean, the life was very different back then. And now you have a woman who's doing the actual opposite of what most women are probably doing during this time. And wow, the kind of control that takes, right? To take off for months or weeks at a time and not come back. I mean, she was very, and so I do think that there was a piece of this to find weaker, maybe men than her, or at least someone she knew that she would be able to go out and do these things on.
Yeah. No, totally. I totally agree. And I think she was looking for a certain type of personality, right? She
Yep.
was looking for a certain personality. Maybe she even put that in her Lonely Hearts Club column. Maybe she talked about it in her Diamond Circle Club. I want somebody with these characteristics. And as long as they're good with me doing that, that's what I want.
Well, Richard Morton doesn't last very long. He dies 3 months after meeting on May 19th, 1953, because she's actually poisoning him. But before she actually poisons him, she poisons her mother in January of 1953 when her mother comes to live with them.
Right. Right. So, I mean, incredible. We're not talking about the mother-in-law.
No.
Not
Not
that I'm
yet.
going to say anything,
Not
but
yet.
I'm not talking about poisoning the mother-in-law, which I think she's already offed one of those, right? I'm losing count here. We know she killed the two daughters, she killed the grandson, killed the infant, killed husband number one, killed husband number two. And now her mother comes to live with her. And you think mom's like, I really don't like your lifestyle. I really don't like what you've made of your life and all of these husbands and relationships. She kills her too.
Yep, she does.
Yeah, in January. And then Morton doesn't know it, but he's being poisoned the whole time.
Yep.
This guy is being poisoned the whole time and dies in May.
Well, and she does actually murder a mother-in-law. She actually murders Lanning's mother, the one that just died, that she just poisoned. She kills her mother-in-law, and the mother-in-law dies in her sleep from poison.
Yeah, well, I think the coroner said, "Oh, she just died in her sleep." I didn't think they suspected poisoning. Again, I don't think any of these cases were linked at all with poisoning until the very end. Really, just like, again, I keep going back to Arsenic Annie. They did not link any of those cases until the very end when the doctor got suspicious, found poison, called back to Columbus and said, you better dig up those bodies, right? Because I think she's killing these people. And we see this same scenario playing out right here. She's getting away with it over and over. She also murders her sister 2 years later. Her sister, who was bedridden.
Oh, God. I mean, that's I don't get that. I just don't. Well,
I don't
do.
know if I've seen
Actually,
this.
I do. She's almost dead. I guess if she's bedridden, is she sick? Does she have a disability? Like, did she figure she was going to be dying soon anyway? And let me make some money off of her? I don't know.
But I mean, this level of lack of empathy.
I know. I mean, you're murdering all your entire family and other people's families. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy.
Right. I with serial killers, when they go and they kill a stranger. I mean, it's horrible either way, but I don't know, maybe to me, because this is all family based, the lack of empathy for killing your family, your mother,
No.
your mother-in-law, your husband, your children, it just goes to a different level for me.
Yeah. Well, it's so, I don't know, like um, I agree, John, and you have to, because there's a different relationship there, right? That's different than going out and murdering a stranger. There's no
Yeah,
attachment, there was no love, there's no communication really, unless of course, you've gotten to know them or dating them and so forth. But typically stranger to stranger is just a predator trying to kill something or someone. But this, you've gotten to know them, they're close to you, that you've shared things about their life. But again, this is much easier for her. This is the easy way to get the money. The hard way to get the money is from what we've seen some other people do, which is become caretakers, right?
right.
When they prey upon older individuals, take insurance out on them, get them to sign deeds over to from their house to them when they die. So that's a different kind of level. But to me, this was like easy for her. And I
Yeah,
think this is why she did it, because she knew that they were close to her and she could get close to them. And why doesn't and people take insurance money on people they live with and know.
right.
So I feel like this was a very easy thing for her to do.
Yeah, so just kind of trying to recap here. I'm going through the
I
body
know.
count again. Her own sister who was bedridden, her own mother, her fourth husband, and the third husband she murdered, Morton, which was in Kansas. So where do we have the murders now? Alabama, Florida, North Carolina, and Kansas.
Yep.
That's a pretty big chunk of the United States where you're going to find lovers, kill them, their family, and you and your family. I
Just
mean,
unbelievable.
so after all of this, her killing, I got to get back to the number count, husband 4 and murdering for the third time, uh third husband, I should say.
Hmm.
She then goes to Oklahoma. So
Okay.
Alabama, Florida, North Carolina, Kansas, and now we're into Oklahoma in 1953.
Okay. What does she tell us about Oklahoma? How does
So
this relationship
she
begin?
gets there and marries Samuel Doss, hence the name Nanny Doss. All right.
Okay.
He was a Nazarene minister who had lost his entire family to a tornado in Carroll County, Arkansas.
Oh,
He disapproved, he was a minister, disapproved of her romance novels and the stories that she loved, right? So this
yep.
entire time that she's been doing the Lonely Hearts Club and fantasizing about lovers and reading about these love stories and everything else. So she marries a minister and he's like, "Hey, I don't approve of any of this." Why they got married, I got no idea. But I don't approve of any of this. Well, what do you think Nanny Doss does? She's going to
Uh,
kill him,
yeah,
right?
what does she do with all of them? So
I mean,
this is no
they
different.
got married in June of 53. By September, it
3 months.
yeah, he's admitted to the hospital with flu-like symptoms, and
Okay.
he's diagnosed with a digestive tract infection. But
Okay.
they treat him and release him on October 5th. Go back home. Do you think they know he's being poisoned?
Yeah, no, because he ends up
No.
dying just like a week later, I think, right?
A week later, he's
1954.
dead.
Yeah.
A week later, he's dead. So, what has she been doing to him? Poisoning him the whole time. They identify it as a digestive tract issue. And she knows what poisons to use and what amounts to use. And we've seen it. And these doctors who are not looking for murder, what are they
Mhm.
saying? Oh, he had a heart attack. Oh,
Yeah.
she died in her sleep. She was already bedridden. Oh, right? They're
Yeah.
not looking at murder. A week later, Samuel
Crazy.
Doss is dead. Now, as always, I invite you to join our social media channels, JJ True Crime and Wine, JJ True Crime and Wine, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And if you'd like to receive our monthly newsletter, simply shoot us an email, truecrime@casarowines.com. Yes, the same place you order the wines, truecrime@casarowines.com. That's CASSARO wines, plural.com. We'll add you to the newsletter, and that way you can keep up on everything True Crime and Wine, our live shows, our schedule, our podcast schedule, and when we're going to be at CrimeCon, yes, coming up the end of May. So truecrime@casarowines.com. We'll add you to the newsletter.
This does start to raise a few flags.
Yep.
Which is good because we need some flags raised against Nanny Doss. But so after he's treated and released, then he dies. But she was in a rush to collect on 2 life insurance policies that she had taken out on him. So she's looking to collect the money. Yes, doctor gets a little suspicious, and now he is ordering an autopsy.
Yes, exactly. So this is what happened in the other case, too. The red flags come up when she is so greedy that she immediately files to collect not 1, but 2 life insurance premiums that she had taken out on him. My God, they'd only been married since June.
Yes.
Literally, they must have got married and she ran down, maybe from the courthouse or the chapel to the insurance company.
Yep.
And took out policies on him. Well, again, that raised red flags. And the doctor's like, I know there was digestive issues, but I sent this guy home. He should not have died in a week. And so very similar to the other arsenic cases that we saw, the doctor goes, no, we need a full-blown autopsy. This was my patient. He should not have died.
And thank goodness for that.
And that's the beginning of the end. Well, and that's what happened in the other case, too. And it wasn't law enforcement stepping in. It was the medical profession stepping in and going, wait a minute, I know my patient. I know what was wrong with him. He shouldn't die in 7 days.
John, the autopsy revealed there was a huge amount of arsenic in his system.
Yep. And that was obviously the beginning of the downfall right there. And you got to remember, why aren't police connecting the dots? We got to remember the time period. We've got to remember the states. Alabama, Florida, North Carolina, Kansas, Oklahoma. We're talking about she was a predator in many, many different states. Most of these deaths they thought were natural because of the poison she used and how she used it. It mimicked other diseases and other causes of death. So, a lot of times, listeners will email and they'll say, I was listening to the podcast and I just absolutely don't know why. Why did the cops figure that out? What cops? What jurisdiction? What lead agency? What communication? Right? This wasn't even a law enforcement matter until when? The doctor ordering the autopsy.
Yeah.
Right? It was not none of this was a law enforcement matter. Do we see infants die, unfortunately? Yes, we do. Right?
Yes,
and we call it SIDS. Do we see people that are infirmed and bedridden die? Yes, they do. Do we see guys have heart attacks? Yes, they do. So, no. Law enforcement was never, ever involved to connect the dots. There weren't dots. And it was a huge map.
Well, and I think you don't have blood, right? We don't have stab wounds, except the one infant, right? That they think that she may
They
have
think,
stabbed him,
yeah, they
right?
think, right.
But again, there's no visible sign of injury, right? For police to investigate any kind of foul play.
Right.
And I go back, John, when you and I really originally talked so many years ago, when you were sharing your story and how you solved the case of the eyeball killer. And I remember you and I talking about the resources you had, right? Versus the resources that we have today. And thinking about the lack of resources they had back then. Of course they weren't tying any of this together. They're in different states. I mean, we didn't even start really evolving for police to talk about close jurisdictions, right? Sometimes you could be in a jurisdiction next to another one and there's murders that are similar and they haven't even connected those dots. So we're talking about time frame. We're talking about time at different locations. I mean, I am not shocked that police were not on this. There were no visible signs of injury except natural death. And then you have this going on in different states.
And quite frankly, Brandy, and I see the emails and I try to answer every single one of them, let people know, but we're in a television true crime society where the crime occurs and 48 minutes later, because that's what it is without commercials.
Yep.
Right? In our show.
Yep. Right.
48 minutes later, everything is wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow, and they've got the DNA, and they've got the forensics, and they've got the autopsy, and they've got the fingerprints. Didn't have it, right? So when you're listening to these stories, whether they're in the U.S. or overseas, put yourself in that country, that time period, that particular decade or part of a decade, and remember what they don't have. So again, this is the second time in a row we've talked about a arsenic poisoner for money, and the second time in a row is a doctor that raised a red flag. So as soon as the autopsy came back and revealed a huge amount of arsenic in her system, the police were alerted. And they promptly arrested her, because right now somebody is finally calling and saying, I have a dead body. He's dead because he was poisoned. I sent him home 7 days earlier and he was fine. This is what happened. So what do they start doing? They start exhuming the bodies of her husbands, of her relatives, and her children, and they start testing them. And lo and behold, what do they discover?
Oh my gosh, that she poisoned 2 infants, 4 of the husbands, 2 of the sisters, her mother, and a nephew had all been killed by arsenic poisoning.
Yep. Unbelievable. Unbelievable that she not only killed her family, she killed her husband's and her husband's family in some cases. And then Nanny confesses to all 11 murders. And this is where she got that moniker, Giggling Grandmother, because by this point, right, that she's captured, it's 1955. She started killing in 27.
Gosh,
this is 30 years later, right?
Yeah.
And she's giggling about it in the confession. Like, oh, I did it for love. Oh, I was looking for love. Oh, I needed the insurance money. Oh, it's really not a big deal.
Yeah, I'm looking at this picture of her laughing. She has her mouth open as though hi, I see excitement in her face.
Yeah.
And gosh, is it the brain injury that causes the lack of ability to feel? Because this woman, I don't know if it's the cameras. I'm going to assume she's smiling for the camera. It looks like this was possibly going into her trial, which was actually in May 17th, 1955. She actually pleads guilty. But gosh, John, just the look on her face. I mean, the woman looks thrilled.
In almost every picture, Brandy, that I've seen.
She's thrilled.
She's smiling.
Wild. Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
She is a cold-blooded killer. And she's laughing about it. She's giggling about it. And that's what I mean. Her actions, yes, went down the line and checked the mark of the, traditional female serial killer for method and motive and all the rest of that. But she, to me, was a predatory killer, always on the hunt for her next victim. And she did plead guilty in May 17th of 55. 4 husbands, 2 children, one of her sisters, her mother, her grandsons, 2 of them, by the way, and mother-in-law, and she was sentenced to life. The prosecutors didn't seek the death penalty because they didn't think they would get it because she was a female.
Oh, well, how many times have we seen that in trials? So
Yep.
I'm not surprised by that. She ends up being in prison in Oklahoma State Penitentiary, and then she was diagnosed with leukemia.
Yep, and died June 2nd, 1965 at the age of 59. So this is one of those stories that we look at, and to me, like I said, it's checking the boxes of the typical female serial killer, but it's way outside of that. When you follow her from state to state to state, when you see her enter these relationships, when you see her going out and having all of these extramarital relationships, when you see her finally get tired with her family or her husband and annihilate them, that's what she is, right?
Yeah.
We haven't used that term today. She is a family annihilator.
Yeah.
She just did it over a long period of time and multiple jurisdictions and multiple families. But could you imagine today if you read a headline about a woman who went in and killed 11? Because that's what she was convicted of, is 11.
Right.
There may have been more, but annihilated her whole family in 11. They called them a family annihilator. She might have been one of the first, but she did it over a number of states and a number of decades, and that just shows how cruel and non-empathetic and non-remorseful. She fits all of the characteristics of a predatory, sociopathic serial killer. As we put a cork in this edition of True Crime and Wine, the podcast, I want to remind our listeners you can follow us on our socials at JJ True Crime and Wine, and you can order your wines at CasaroWines.com. And I think that pretty much wraps up our business for today. So, of course, I want to thank my co-host, Brandy Diamond, for joining me on this journey. She's always wonderful, eliciting the great questions out there and getting those answers that y'all want to hear about. And, of course, our producer, Lauren Bezel, back in the Corsicana Command Center, for making the show possible. And I invite you to join us on our next episode where we keep up this family theme. Yeah, we got a little family theme going here in season 4 as we feature a pair of brothers who decided bonding time was kidnapping and murder. I'm John Matthews, and thanks for joining us today for True Crime and Wine. Salute.